Will AI and robots emotionally challenge us? That's a question I woke up to this morning from a really good friend who apparently was out quite late last night. And she was considering these questions based on the video that I made yesterday about how we'll have 100 million robots running around our streets, our factories, and everywhere else in 2030, probably. So I decided, you know what? Let's just make another video about that. Can robots, can AI emotionally challenge us? Well, the simple question is, they already do. And to really drive that home, I want to talk to you about some stuff that's been happening the last 2 years. Early 2024, there already came out some studies where they had replaced doctors, human doctors, with AI when it came to delivering the diagnoses to patients. So think of it this way. Patient had gone to the doctor, they had gotten a diagnosis. All of this was done the normal way. But when the diagnosis was delivered to the patient, rather than use a human doctor to deliver it, they had an AI deliver it. And initially this was done with chat. I think there now is already research where they did it with a voice AI as well, but the results were really quite impressive. The studies that I was referring to, there's actually multiple, but there was a study done by Google with an AI called Amy, Articulate Medical Intelligence Explorer. And basically what the results said was that Amy did better at diagnosing and scored higher on empathy scaling, or on empathy, scored higher on empathy than human doctors. Now, of course, this was a Google study. There was another one from ChatGPT, which was published also in 2024. Researchers compared ChatGPT's responses to physicians' answers to nearly 200 medical questions submitted by patients on public social media fora. And again, they found that ChatGPT did a lot better in answering the questions in a way more emphatic way, leading to patients being far more happy with the answers that they got and feeling better about it than they would have had with human doctors. So there's multiple other studies, also studies that were not done by big tech, like the Cognitive Empathy Scale study, which saw a series of 4 lab experiment test different aspects of empathy using AI cognition. Empathy scaling, and these involved participants reviewing scenarios of telehealth consultations with either physicians or AI chatbots with varying empathic elements. I can go on about this. The point is that at the start of 2024, when we didn't really have advanced voice models like we have today, which I'll get into in a second, we already saw that AI was outperforming human doctors on both diagnoses and the empathy when it came to talking to patients. And this was all still in the early days of AI, because really the start of 2024 is like light years away. As this technology continues to improve, its performance will also improve. The one thing we need to keep in mind is that right now, AI doesn't feel empathy. And this is very often a point of contention for people. They'll say like, well, AI is a robot, right? It can't really feel. And so, they somehow see that as an argument against it, which I don't understand, because the truth be told, it doesn't matter. Let's start there. First of all, for us, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the robot can or cannot feel, as long as we feel that it feels, right? Because that's all in our mind. I don't know that you feel anything. You might be a sociopath, right? That's literally what sociopaths do. That's what psychopaths do. They make us feel that they feel. They pretend. And they do it so well that they can fool all of us. So at the end of the day, as long as the intent is not malicious, but they can make us feel that they feel. They can make us feel empathy, or they can make it feel like they feel empathy towards us. That's only the real thing that matters. That's the only real thing that matters, right? We don't want a doctor that actually cares about us. Well, we do, but we most of all want a doctor that makes us feel like he really cares about us, because that's what makes us feel safe. That's what makes us feel better. That's what gives us confidence in their diagnoses and their ability and their willingness to help us, right? And this is something people really need to understand, because at the end of the day, and this of course is a philosophical debate, but we can't be sure that anybody is feeling anything, right? We have no proof that we are not the only ones, which means in this case you, or in my case me, that I'm the only one living in this simulation, and that everything we see is really not true. We just assume that it is, because if we didn't, we'd probably be diagnosed with a psychosis or, with some kind of mental illness, hallucination, whatever. But the truth is we don't have any proof for that. We accept the proof that we have. We accept that that is probably the case. But this is a philosophical debate. Let's not get deeper into that. So go back to the question that my friend asked me. She said, can AI and robots emotionally challenge us? And the question to that is yes, they can, and they already do, in the sense that they can give us feelings and challenge our feelings with their behavior. And in fact, this is already being used very successfully, for example, in South Korea. Because what you might or might not know, a lot of people are worried that the world is getting overpopulated. But the actual truth is that we are facing population collapse. So here is a list of the world's super age societies, right? And here we see Monaco, with 36% of Monaco citizens being over 65. Next country up is Japan, St. Helena, well, that's a small island. Italy, 25%. Portugal, 24.9%. Let's look, Hong Kong is here. It's hard to read, just under Germany, 23%. And we can go on. The Netherlands is also in here. I'm pretty sure, yeah, here, 20.9% of our population is over 65. And so this number goes up every single year, right? In Japan and South Korea, and I don't see South Korea on this list, but South Korea is also very high up. I know this for a fact. In Japan, they lose 700,000 people every year. These are elderly people that die, right? Mostly. And they don't have enough young people, because that's the other thing that's going on. We're seeing replacement level collapse across the entire Western world, right? To replace your population, you need a man and a woman to have 2.1 child on average, right? That way, you replace the current population. What we've seen throughout time is that when civilizations become more advanced and more economically stable and proficient, that number goes down. And this has everything to do with advancement, emancipation plays into this, right? Because as civilizations get more advanced, the differentiators between men and women change. Women generally tend to break free from more traditional roles where they take care of the children. At least that's what we've seen in the Western world. And as a result, they start to have their children later in life. And having children later in life actually results in them having less children as well. Because a woman that has a child at 40 might not really have the physical energy anymore and the kind of enthusiasm and, in a way, naivete, which is what is required of young parents, to have another one. This is why having children young is actually way better for, at least for reproduction and for the replacement ratio of a society, because young people just lack the experience and the kind of understanding of what the choices that they make really imply for their life, right? But once you're 40, you really know how much work it's going to be if you have a second child or even one, because you've seen it around you and you know what sacrifices you'll have to make, right? You're thinking about that and you're thinking to yourself, well, I already worked 20 years. Do I really want to do that? The fact is, and here are the numbers in this chart, that as countries become more advanced, the replacement rate declines. And this across the world is also leading to aging populations.
찹찹하고 정할 때가 좀 이럴 때가 있잖아요.
할머니, 저도 손을 잡을래요.
Here, robots are also helping. Hyosun Chun is one of about 7,000 elderly Koreans to receive a hyodol. It looks like a rag doll, but it's an AI robot.
Yeah, so see, there you have it. It's an AI robot. I didn't just show you that we are facing population decline and actually stagnation of population growth on Earth and population collapse in multiple places. And this is definitely coming to the West. This is coming to Western Europe. This is coming to North America. And this is, by the way, also why a lot of the left wing say, well, we need migrants, we need migration. The truth is that I don't think we do, because we can and we will have AI and robots to do a lot of the work and to take care of our elderly, as we can see here. Now, that's not the main question of this video today, but coming back to this, so this shows that AI and robots can emotionally challenge us already, right? We are already seeing experiments that are very successful around the world where AI is being used to alleviate mental suffering, loneliness, or any kind of these things. What's more is that there are multiple AIs also being developed to read our emotions better and to be better on that. So I want to show you, for example, here. What you see here is this is Hume, and this is all experimental, right? This is Hume, this is an AI, and as you saw, so here we go. So here I'm at Hume, and as you can see, it's reading my expressions in my face, right? So amusement, joy, interest, concentration, calmness, and I can... It's the... anger. Yeah, see? Amusement, enjoy, boredom, surprise. See, so you see, it's reading all of my emotions. This is actually working quite well. Let's see. Speech, listening for speech, top expressions, determination, awkwardness, excitement. I'm really sure about this. I just want to tell you that we're gonna go to the skies. Sadness. Well, okay, maybe I'm overdoing it, but as you can see, it's trying to read emotions in my voice, and it's actually reading a determination. So that sounds good. Everything I wanted to show you here is that AI is already capable of doing this, right? And Hume is just one of the companies that are developing this, and they're doing really well. And it can combine reading my facial expressions with reading my voice. So that means that AI is very quickly learning very, very well how to read our emotions and then to translate that into responses that make us feel like they have emotions, like they are emphatic to us. And that will challenge our emotional state. Of course, there is a million reasons you could think of that would make this very dystopic. How is Mark Zuckerberg going to use this in Facebook? I know people are worried about that. But the truth is that there's also so much good that could come from this. For example, my mother's 80 years old, right? She is lonely. I can tell you, because this is a pandemic, right? This is a major problem around the world. Old people are lonely. They're lonely, alone at home. Their kids are somewhere in the world, traveling, working, whatever. And loneliness is just really a big problem. And as I've shown you as well, we have these aging populations, right? So the loneliness pandemic for elderly people is going to be a problem more and more and more. And on top of that, because we have these aging populations, there's going to be less young people all the time to do all the work to keep the economy going. So this is another reason why robotics and AI can really be of so much help. And finally, of course, a little bit less popular opinion, but personally, I think that the idea of multiculturalism has been taken too far. And if you go back in history, if you, for example, read Why Empires Fall by Rapley and Heather, you'll find that it always leads to the demise of the first prominent culture. Say, for example, we take a look at the West. A lot of people think that mixing cultures is always a good thing and it can only lead to better things. But that would only be the case if the cultures that you're mixing all have the kind of values that we value today. Values like freedom and individualism, values like women's emancipation, the freedom to have any sexual preference that you want. If all the cultures that you mix basically all are willing to adopt those values, then you have no problem. But if they don't, then you have a problem. And if you look at the Roman Empire, for example, there, what you saw is that although the Roman Empire wasn't overrun by barbarian hordes as we used to think in the past, there was a massive influx towards the end of the Roman Empire of the cultures of the people that used to live outside of the empire. And as a result, the Roman Empire was watered down, and a lot of what was Roman culture was lost. We barely managed to hold on to some of the foundations of the Roman Empire that we hold to this very day, like, for example, a legislative body in Western democracies, and the idea, for example, of ownership. Personal property. These come from the Roman Empire, and we held on to those, and we could have lost those ideas and those values as well. And so to ultimately, this is my belief, and I know that's not popular, I think that mixing cultures can be good, but that there are limitations on it if you want to preserve kind of the consistency and the most highly held values of a particular culture. So having massive streams of migration in the world is not necessarily a good thing. And so the idea that we need, if we want to maintain Western economies, that the only way to do that with aging populations and population decline is to get migrants to come here might not be a good idea. And in the past, we would have had no choice, but in the present, we do. Because as AI and robotics become more prolific and more powerful, they will also provide us with the opportunity to not be dependent on mass migration. Can AI and robots emotionally challenge us and make us into better human beings? Well, as I've shown you now, the answer to that, I believe, is wholeheartedly yes. Those 100 million that will be in our factories and our household by 2030 or 2035 at the latest, these will also be robots that will be very, very capable in reading our emotions, understanding our needs, and helping us with those. They will act as our companions. They will give us emotional support. They will be our friends. And I think that's a really good thing, especially if we see where the world is headed, where populations are headed. Ultimately, I believe that this could turn into a golden age for humanity, because if we no longer need to do all the menial labor, all the hard work, because we have AI and robotics to do that for us, then we can truly go on an exploration of what it means means to be human. And I think that could lead to a really wonderful time for humanity as a whole, where we can become unified. There's some caveats there that we'll have to overcome, but this is not the video for those. Can AI and robots emotionally surpass us? If you're a person, I don't know. What I can say is that AI and robotics will be better at reading our emotions very soon than we are at reading each other's emotions. And that's crazy to think about, because humans spent, Homo sapiens has been around 200,000 years, but the hominids, it's been around for, I think, 6 million years. That is the time we've already been spending, at the very least, learning how to read other people's facial expressions, behaviors, nonverbal communication. But what we're seeing now is that AI is basically doing all of that in 2 decades. And if that trend progresses, if that accelerated improvement keeps going, then of course AI is going to completely outperform us in every single way. And there's no reason to believe that it won't, which is something that I'm going to spend another video on, discussing the exponential rate of AI's progress, why that's happening, why it's so important, and what that means for our future. Robots and AI are going to be part of humanity. We will merge with this technology, and that will be the next step in our evolution. And I think that is a totally natural process. It's just hard to consider that, because we're the first species that humans ever encountered that are going through that process, making that evolutionary step. And that's why it seems maybe a little out of the ordinary. And that's why some people consider it not natural, but I think it is. That's another video. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that was valuable to you. That's it for now. Mr. Metaverse signing off. And as always, like they say in the Netherlands, see you later.